Good day and welcome to this webinar titled Internationalization of Higher Education in Asia Pacific, Current Trends and Future Scenarios. This is a collaborative effort by APAIE and IAU. I'm Venki Shankaraman. I'm the current president of APAIE, and I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to IAU and specifically to Giorgio Marinoni, Manager of Higher Education and Internationalization at IAU, for their collaboration with APAIE in launching this webinar. The purpose of today's session is to present key findings from the 6th IAU Global Survey on Internationalization for Asia and Pacific. And following this presentation, which will be led by Giorgio, we will have a panel discussion which is moderated by Giorgio, and we have experts from different parts of Asia and Pacific who are participating in this panel session. To further validate the survey results, APAIE has established a dedicated research group. We will provide more details during this the discussion. For those interested, please visit the APAIE website for updates on the 2025 conference in India, where we anticipate sharing some of the research outcomes. Thank you, and over to Giorgio.
Thank you very much, Venki, and let me thank APAIE for this first joint APAIE IAU webinar. It's really a pleasure for us to collaborate with you, and a big welcome to all the panelists and to all participants. It's really a pleasure being here. First of all, let me apologize in the name of our Secretary General, Ligia van Land, who cannot be here today with us to introduce this webinar because she is in a mission elsewhere. It was unexpected, so please accept her apologies. I will try to substitute in this introductory word at the beginning, and then I will move straight to the presentation of the result of the 6th IAU Global Survey with a special focus on the Asia-Pacific region. And then, as Venki said, we will go for a very interesting perspective from some of the key countries in the Asia-Pacific region. This webinar is part of the series of webinars that the International Association of Universities is conducting. I will share with you the link where you can find all previous webinars that have been conducted in this series. And this series is conducted by the International Association of Universities, but often in partnership with other organizations in order to have a better reach out in different parts of the world, but also in order to have different point of view and perspectives on the most important issues in higher education around the world. This webinar will be dedicated, of course, to the Asia-Pacific region and will be specific on internationalization of higher education. And more specifically, it will present, as I said, the result of the 6th Global Survey on Internationalization of Higher Education, which was conducted by the International Association of Universities last year. And the report was published at the beginning of this year. So I prepare a few slides that I will share with you. I think it should work right now. So as I said, I will simply present few slides about the results of the Global Survey on Higher Education Internationalization. This Global Survey is the 6th in a series of global surveys that was launched in 2001 by the International Association of Universities. It was an online survey that was conducted between January and June of last year. It was a survey, it was a trilingual survey, and this is a point that maybe we can come back later on during the discussion, in English, Spanish, and French. A very important point, it was an institutional survey. So the aim of the survey was to get the institutional perspective on internationalization. It gathers responses for 722 higher education institutions, so only one response per institution, in 110 countries and territories around the world. This number of replies was sufficient to have a statistically relevant analysis, both at global level and at regional levels in 6 different world regions that I will present you in a while. The report and the executive summary are both freely available on the IAU website at the link. And later on, when you will have the slides, you can definitely click on the link and get the report if you don't have it yet. Here, it's the first important point about the distribution of replies. As you can see, we got replies from all over the world in 6 different regions, but the way that these regions replied is not the same. In fact, if you're looking at the distribution of higher education institutions in the world, and we look at the distribution of replies, we see that Europe and Latin America have replied more than they should have, if you want, like in the sense that there are many more replies from Europe and Latin America in the survey than their weight in the distribution of higher education institutions in the world. On the other hand, and this is the most important point for today's webinar, North America and Asia Pacific have replied less than they should reply. And as you can see here, Asia Pacific represents almost 1/3 of the higher education sector in the world. So it's the biggest region in the world, but only 9% of response from the survey come from Asia Pacific. So this is something that it's important to notice, and it is something that shows that unfortunately Asia Pacific is not so well represented in the survey at a global level. And this is also an opportunity for us to make a call and try to understand why Asia Pacific institutions have not replied, and hopefully they will reply more in other surveys that the International Association of Universities will conduct and is already conducting. I will share with you an example later on in the chat, because we believe that the voice of higher education institutions in Asia Pacific, it's really important to have it. Okay, so let me move now to some results of the survey. The first one that I want to share with you, it's the level of importance of internationalization. And as we can see in the graph, internationalization is of high importance in all regions of the world. And Asia Pacific is topping this list with 85% of higher education institutions that said that internationalization is very important for their academic leadership. On top of that, if we look how internationalization importance has changed in the last 5 years, we see that internationalization has become even more important. And once again, Asian Pacific is topping the list, with 87% of institutions saying that importance has either increased or substantially increased. If we look at the benefits of internationalization, we see that enhanced international cooperation and capacity building is the most significant benefit in all regions of the world. And this is even more true in Asian Pacific, where 73% of higher education institutions selected this benefit as the most important. Interesting enough, in Asia Pacific, also 55% of institutions, so the majority, selected increased global, international, and intercultural competencies as for both students and staff as one of the most important benefits of internationalization. When we move to risk, the situation is completely different. In fact, there were 2 questions about risk. There were questions about institutional and societal risks, and in none of them we see a common risk emerging, as it was the case for the benefit instead. In Asia Pacific, the situation is exactly the same. There is no common risk emerging. If we look at which one is the most selected, let's say, when we look at institutional risk, it's difficult to assess or recognize quality of courses programs offered by foreign institutions, so recognition issues, but it's selected only by 40% of HEIs. So it is common, but not, let's say, so common. Same situation is for the societal risk, which in Asia Pacific is brain drain, again selected by 45% of higher education institutions. There should be many explanations possible, and maybe this is a point for the discussion with our experts. One very interesting result, in my point of view, about the survey, it's the geographical priorities for internationalization. If we look at the global level, 59% of higher education institutions have geographic priorities for internationalization. When we look at which regions are prioritized, we see a dominance of Europe, like 75% of higher education institutions selected Europe as a very important region, whereas Asia Pacific comes only in the 4th place. Of course, these are the results at the global level. To have a better understanding of the dynamic at play at regional level, it's interesting to see this result at the regional level. The first result that comes clearly from an analysis of the results at the regional level is that we have a clear regionalization trend in some regions of the world. And Asia-Pacific is one of them. 71% of higher education institutions in Asia-Pacific say that the priority region for them is Asia-Pacific. So a clear regionalization trend. In Europe, this trend, you see, it's even bigger. It's 90% of higher education institutions in Europe that are selecting their own region as the most important. We see this regionalization trend also in Latin America and the Caribbean and in Sub-Saharan Africa. But we don't see it neither in North Africa and the Middle East, and absolutely not in North America. This is something interesting to keep in mind. When we look beyond the regionalization and we look at how regions are selecting other regions as a priority, and if we look at Asia and Pacific, we see that Asia Pacific prioritizes Europe. So 55% of higher education institutions in Asia Pacific select Europe as a priority region. However, this is not reciprocated. Only 28% of institutions in Europe select Asia Pacific as a priority region. On the other hand, we see that 71% of institutions in North America select Asia Pacific as a top priority region. From other results of the survey, there could be an explanation for this one. And unfortunately, in my opinion, is not a very positive explanation, in the sense that we see from the results of the survey that internationalization in North America is strongly focused on the attraction of international degree-seeking students. And we know that Asian Pacific is the main source region for such type of students. Coming to international, intercultural and global learning outcomes, here we see that Asia Pacific is leading in this aspect, because together with North Africa and the Middle East is the region that has the highest percent of higher education institutions that have defined these learning outcomes. They have different approaches, Asia Pacific and North Africa and the Middle East. In Asia Pacific, these learning outcomes are usually defined at the institutional level, whereas in North Africa and the Middle East, they are defined at national level. The region with the least development instead is North America. Let's move to the partnership and see how the number of international partnerships has changed in the last 5 years. And this, what is interesting is that the number of the partnership has increased in all regions of the world in the last 5 years, despite COVID-19, despite the geopolitical tensions that are at play in the world. The number of partnerships that higher education institutions have has increased. And once more, Asian Pacific is leading in the number of partnerships. You see, 79% of higher education institutions in Asia Pacific said the number of partnerships has increased. Another thing that has increased in the last 5 years is the importance of internationalization of the curriculum at home. Again, it has increased in our region, and again, Asian Pacific, it's kind of leading. However, we can see that it's more a somewhat increase, so it's not a super marked increase, it's not a substantial increase, but it is an increase in the importance of internationalization of the curriculum at home. I apologize, this slide might not very easy to understand, but it's representing the way that the action that are leading to internationalization of the curriculum at home. And what we can see is that online activities like COIL, like virtual exchange, like collaborative international project are the activities that have increased in importance the most in all regions of the world, including Asia and Pacific. Let me move to the link between internationalization and community societal engagement. This is a positive result at the global level because these two are linked at 60% of institutions. However, it's still a preliminary link because if we look at the impact assessment of internationalization on communities and societal engagement, this is performed only at 22% of higher education institutions. Once more, Asian Pacific is leading in this regard, because it's the region with the highest percentage of education institutions, 70%, that these two priorities are linked. In terms of the linkage between internationalization and community societal engagement, we see there are three ways that are predominant: international development cooperation, organization of events with international speakers, and commitment at regional level and involvement of neighboring regions. Asian Pacific and the global results are similar. What changes is just the order of priority, as you can see on the right, the global result, and on the left, the result for Asian Pacific. When we are coming to internationalization and sustainable development, another positive result, in my opinion, because we see that these two priorities are linked at the majority of education institutions around the world. And once more, Asian Pacific is the most advanced region in linking internationalization and sustainable development. If you look at the violet bar on the right of the slides, 52% of higher education institutions in Asian Pacific reply that they are using internationalization as a way to achieve sustainable development. Last but not least, there was a question on the future priorities for internationalization. And the result in Asia Pacific is that there is no common pressing future priority. So the situation is very diverse. This is the same situation at global level and also in Europe. However, in some other regions of the world, there are clear priorities, like in Latin America or in Sub-Saharan Africa. But in Asia Pacific, we have a very diverse situation. And finally, some caveats in interpreting the data. For its own construction, the survey reflects the institutional perspective. There can, of course, be a self-selection bias in the sense that the institution that replied the survey, we didn't select them, that we asked all the education institutions to reply the survey. So it's possible that the institutions that replied are those that are more involved in internationalization. And last but not least, we have to remember that internationalization is a complex process that involves many different actors. So higher education institutions are the main actor, but not the only one. So what would be interesting in the future is to investigate the perception of other actors, both internal at the education institution, so to see if there are different perspectives inside the education institution, but also external, to see if there are different perspectives from, let's say, government, businesses, and civil society. Okay, thank you very much for your interest and for having listened to this presentation. As you can see here, you can download the report, as I mentioned before. But now I would like to move from this presentation to some reaction from our distinguished panelists and distinguished speakers. First, let me introduce the panelists. We have a very distinguished panel of 5 excellent speakers representing different countries in the Asia-Pacific region. We have Helen Kronberger, who is the global sector lead at international education at Austrade from Australia. Then we have Xie Meng, professor at the School of Education at Renmin University in China. We have Vidya Yeravedkar, sorry Vidya for mispronouncing your name, who is the Chancellor of Symbiosis International University in India. We have Yuto Kitamura, professor at the Graduate School of Education at the University of Tokyo in Japan. And last but not least, we have Norpranu Diraititi, again, apologies for not spelling correctly the name, Vice President for International Relations and Corporate Communication at Mai Dol University, Thailand. And I will ask each speaker to react to the presentation of the survey in about 8 minutes. And I would like to start with Helen. Helen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the many and diverse lands on which we're meeting today, and I recognise their cultures, history and diversity and their deep connections to land, waters and communities. For me, these are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respect to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. It's absolutely wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the panel today. It's amazing that technology allows us to gather up as a global education community, and especially as a community of practitioners and academics who are actively participating in internationalization. It's also been really interesting to read the results of the survey at the regional, national, and institutional level, and to see those slides really summarizing the results. And what an interesting 5 years it has been since the last one. So I live in Melbourne, and hello to friends from Melbourne that I've seen in the chat already. What a 5 years it has been for us. We had a lot of lockdowns, as so many on this call have, and we rapidly moved to virtual platforms, and the sector generally agreed that we had made about 3 years of progress in developing our online delivery in about 3 weeks in that emergency situation. It really changed things for us educationally, as I'm sure it did for so many. So we responded by moving lectures and tutorials online. We had synchronous and asynchronous teaching to accommodate students in different time zones. And as indicated in the survey results, moving to online introduced new challenges, not just opportunities. It was managing time zones, but it was also a huge change for academic staff in adapting to new teaching methods. At the national level, with institutional participation, we ran a 3-month trial of free short courses online, which we called Study with Australia. And that's where we started to shift the way that we talked about only study in Australia to a more inclusive and expansive offering, including in Australia and online. We also developed the Study Australia Industry Experience Program, and this was designed to bring international students from all over the world who were unable to travel to Australia at that time, together with students in small groups. So working with a company called Practera, we put these students into small teams with other international students and with Australian students as well, so that they could build those peer relationships. And that was to undertake short virtual internship programs with employers in Australia and internationally. And I can see in the survey results that there's an ongoing commitment by institutions that have responded to virtual exchanges, to COIL, to cooperative learning online, and to online academic preparation courses. In Australia, we've certainly continued that virtual internship program at the national level with around 5,000 students, including 4,200 international students, having completed that program. And this is all in addition to the transnational education offerings. So like other survey respondents in other regions, COVID also brought those new modes and models of delivery, and it really gave learners more flexibility and more ownership of their personal learning journey. So they were able to start online and then come onshore, or to stack their program and get credit gradually through online programs. So while a return to face-to-face learning was definitely very welcomed by domestic and international students and by academic staff, these hybrid models and more flexible journeys remained in place. So even now, if a student wants to complete even only part of their degree program in Australia, they can still commence their program from outside of Australia and do a combination of elements to their whole program. So one of the survey results that's interesting to me is that the majority of respondents indicated where they had undertaken a revision of their internationalization strategy, but not due to COVID-19, because certainly for us, that was absolutely why we undertook a new national strategy during COVID as a direct result of COVID. And that was a strategy called 2021 to 2030, which is even now being superseded by another new process and a new strategic framework for the future. When we think about our global relationships and the power of international education, it's really heartening to see that the majority of survey respondents believe that its importance is high and increasing, including with regards to cooperation and capacity building, and the importance of that intercultural knowledge for students and staff. So in Australia, the conversation for quite some time now has acknowledged the significance of international education to our campuses, to classroom life, and to communities. And this includes benefits to domestic and international learners who are preparing to enter a globalized workforce. It brings new perspectives to the classroom and a more diverse campus and student experience. But there is a new level of discussion in Australia that's more open and with more emphasis about how central internationalization in education is to our international relationships more broadly, bilaterally. So the Australian government understands the role that education plays in supporting bilateral relationships and especially building people-to-people links globally. And you can really see evidence of this in our long-term Australia Awards program that offers scholarships to inbound students, and also in our scholarships for outbound students who study across the Indo-Pacific region under the new Colombo Plan program, and they've been doing that since 2014. So likewise, the trade agency that I work for is very interested in the ways that our 3 million strong alumni network globally already supports two-way trade and investment. But more importantly, in my personal view, the rise of intercultural competency is an incredibly positive outcome in the survey results, and the noticeable increase that respondents have spoken about in the importance of internationalizing the curriculum and a link between that and societal and community engagement, and even the positive role that internationalization plays in reducing racism and xenophobia, not only within institutions, but in their surrounding communities. So our surrounding community is very diverse. We have students from 193 countries who are joining a local community that comprises the world's oldest continuous cultures, and Australians who identify with more than 270 ancestries. And so we continue to seek out partnerships internationally. This is very important for Australia. You can already see that through so many institutional level partnerships and agreements, student mobility programs, full degree programs, as well as in research collaboration and skills training. And I can see in the survey that we're not alone in prioritising this. We can see that international partnerships are increasing, that there's joint degree programs and dual degree programs and multiple models in play. And as part of the national agenda, Australia is also an education and training partner to foreign governments and industry, including on capacity building efforts in the Asia Pacific. And there's so many benefits to such partnerships that are mutual. These seek to address individual and shared challenges. And I note with interest the survey results focused on the increasing importance of capacity building as both a priority and a benefit. Because some problems and challenges, as we all know, transcend geographical boundaries, and they're simply too large for one nation, let alone one education institution to solve alone. And these problems without passports, as Kofi Annan famously referred to them, have the potential to impact the whole of humanity, including major problems related to climate, health, poverty, conflict, and more. So Australian universities are really taking their role in addressing climate change in particular very seriously, and we see that in the impact rankings for their work addressing the UN SDGs. And we've seen leaders emerge in the sector globally, like the International Education Sustainability Group and the Climate Action Network in International Education, or CANI. And so I was interested and actually very heartened to read in the survey results that the overall majority of institutions confirmed that their internationalization policies and activities take into account equity and inclusion and sustainable development, even beyond climate action, and especially in the Asia Pacific region. I acknowledge lastly, though, that it's not always easy to internationalize. The responses in the survey relate to the very real challenges of institutional workloads, balancing local and international priorities, managing staff locations, etc. And there's also always budget constraints, different risk appetites, complexities of partnerships. And I guess the last thing I would note is that while strategies may not have changed as a result of COVID, the survey responses definitely show that respondents have either recently made changes or plan to make changes. So change, as always, is a common factor for us all. And while we do face many challenges, the survey really does affirm for me a deep and global community commitment to internationalization. So thanks so much for having me on the panel today.
Thank you very much, Helen, for sharing this very interesting perspective from Australia. And now, without further ado, I would like to move to the second speaker of today. We move from Australia to China. And please, Professor Meng, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I would like to share my PowerPoint with you.
Yeah, it works.
That's great.
Maybe you can try to put it full screen.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. It is my great pleasure to participate in this forum to discuss issues related to the internationalization of Chinese higher education around the 6th IAU Global Survey on Internationalization for Asia Pacific. Before I joined the Renmin University, I have a study and research experience at Hong Kong and Cambridge, which helped me to observe and do research about the higher education internationalization in different regions. And my primary research focused on higher education, internationalization, and international academic relations, with particular interest in the development of Chinese higher educations. Regarding the status and the development trend of internationalization of Chinese higher education in recent years, I think there are 2 points in particular that are worth explaining. The first is China's national policy of opening up education to the outside world. Since the reform and opening up in 1978, China has been steadfast in its commitment to opening up higher education to the outside world, which serves as an important premise for our discussion of internationalization. Over the past 40 years, the expansion and growth of Chinese higher education has occurred in tandem with the country's broad modernization and transformation. Furthermore, China has persisted its opening up of education in a new era. In June 2020, China's Ministry of Education, along with 7 other government bodies, have published a new policy document, the opinions on accelerating and expanding the opening up of education in the new era. From what has come to light so far, the opinions suggest there remains a continued strong commitment by China to the internationalization of the education sector. Second, China's implementation of world-class university construction projects from Project 211, Project 985, and double first-class construction. The internationalization of higher education is an important strategic approach. I believe Chinese universities are increasingly recognizing the value of internationalization, not just for prestige or global university ranking, but as a means to enhance the quality of education, research, and innovation. The growing emphasis on internationalization strategies and for Chinese higher education to truly become globally competitive and influential. In summary, it is clear that the Chinese state and policymakers have a very deliberate and strategic orientation towards the internationalization of higher education. And in the following section, I would like to give some response and reflections about the survey, the findings of the survey. The first is about the geographic priorities for internationalization. The survey found that there is a clear regionalization trend in Asia Pacific. By and large, I agree with this finding, especially considering the impact of the epidemics over the past few years. I would like to illustrate this with a study conducted in 2014, 10 years ago, and the case of Renmin University in 2024, both focusing on China's top research universities. In 2014, we have conducted a research about the international network of China's top universities. By analyzing data of 5 leading universities, we found that the global networks of Chinese top universities span the world. On the one hand, China's top universities appear to have a strong desire to collaborate with the best-known, top-ranked higher education institutions and research centers that are mainly concentrated in North America and Europe. On the other hand, taking Tsinghua University as a case, it keeps its tradition of building partnership with MIT, Stanford, and also Harvard. Students at Tsinghua can access to distinguished international education program. Tsinghua participates in the forward-looking and very high-level scientific research collaboration, which not only contribute to the improvement of the university's scientific research level, but also helps Tsinghua enhance its international reputation. More than 60% of the 5 top universities' international partnerships are in North American and European heartlands. This suggests that China's top universities look to the best institutions in major countries. And you may find in the figures, in comparison with the over-representation of North American and European partners, Asian higher education institutions are becoming increasingly important in the international engagement at China's top universities. In general, around 60% international partners are based in Asia. And for China's top universities, the geographic location of an institution is an important factor in this section of international partner. The past 10 years have witnessed the regionalization trend emerging within the Asia-Pacific higher education landscape, alongside the continued importance of Europe and North America as a priority region for internationalization. Now, let me take Renmin University as a case. It is the first comprehensive research-oriented university founded by People's Republic of China. It is also the cradle of the builder of the People's Republic of China and an influential leader in China's higher education in the humanities and social sciences. And the Renmin University has established international partnership with more than 300 universities and organizations around the world, with 115 partners in Asia, 108 in Europe, and 65 in North America and South America. From my point of view, the trend of regionalization has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, but I agree that regionalization is still one of the future and important directions for internationalization of higher education in Asia-Pacific region and China. This is even more predictable if we consider the EU Bologna process and the International Association of Universities. The regionalization dynamic is an important development. Higher education institutions in East Asia Pacific increasingly look to engage with their neighbors within the same geographic area. There are a few key factors come to that trend. The first reason can be the proximity and cultural and linguistic affinities. It is easier for us and more natural to collaborate with the institutions with geographically proximate. The second one, which is even more important, lies in the economic development of the Asia-Pacific region and the increase in the scale and the quality of higher education. On the one hand, there is a growing demand for higher education from students and families in the Asia-Pacific region. On the other hand, the rapid development and the quality improvement of higher education in countries such as Japan, China, Singapore can lead to the internal cooperation and development. And the third one could be the desire to use regional growth and influence. However, as you noted, the Asia-Pacific higher education institutions still consider Europe and North America to be critically important region for their internationalization efforts. This speaks to enduring global influence and appeal of the higher education powerhouses in the West. The coexistence of these two parallel traits, regionalization with Asia-Pacific and continued outreach to Europe and North America, underscores the multifaceted and complex nature of higher education institutions. The survey also found that Asia-Pacific is the most important region for higher education institutions for different regions, especially for North America. And it reported that in some cases, this interest might be for the wrong reason. The fact that Asia-Pacific region is considered the most important region for North American higher education institutions and is seen as important or very important by majority of higher education institutions globally does indeed point to a strong worldwide interest in engaging with dynamic and rapidly expanding higher education landscape. However, as you rightly pointed out, a significant driver of this interest from North American institutions may be the region's status as a major source of international students. This suggests that the motivation behind the focus on Asia-Pacific could be more heavily weighted towards commercial and enrollment-driven factors rather than the holistic interest in academic and research collaboration, cultural exchange, or other high-level goals of internationalization. I don't think this is a wrong reason. On the contrary, it is a very objective reason. However, if these institutions and organizations only recognize economic and market value and ignore the value of other aspects, this will become a problem and short-sightedness on their part, okay? And the second one about the institution-wide.
Professor Meng, can you please move to the conclusion because there is not much time left.
Okay, sure. And I'm highly support this this finding, and I give some research and even the case to support this perspective. And I want to highlight that and in China, we give more attention to the internationalization and even the inside and outside. Okay, maybe we can have more discussion after this report.
Thank you very much, Professor Meng, for sharing very interesting perspective from China. This has been much appreciated. I would like to move now from China to India and ask Dr. Vidya to present the Indian case.
Thank you, Giorgio. Thank you very much. Maybe my colleague from China can stop sharing her slides.
Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, let me thank IAU and APAIE for this wonderful webinar. It was very, very timely, very important. And the results that came out are not really very shocking. We expected these kind of results from the 6th IAU survey. Being in Asia Pacific, you could expect a lesser response, but 9% was very, very low. I think the response to the survey should have been much higher in Asia Pacific, given the number of higher education institutions present here. But I think all of us get bogged down with too many surveys coming to us. So maybe that could be one of the reasons why people did not participate. Or simply that not many institutions, though the number of higher education institutions in Asia Pacific, in India as a country, if you look at it, there are 1,000 plus universities and more than 50,000 colleges, which are degree granting colleges. But even with such a large higher education system, when such surveys are sent to all of them, you will get very few responses, specifically on internationalization, because internationalization is very limited to a few institutions in India or a few universities in India and not really to all. However, the new education policy that was rolled out in 2020 has got internationalization at the as a nucleus, or everything revolves around internationalization, and internationalization of higher education plays an important role in the new education policy implementation as well. And therefore, I think for all of us as proponents of internationalization, this has been a really welcome change in the Indian higher education system. I would also like to highlight that in the Indian context, the last 5 years in the space of internationalization have been really critical and important. In 2018, the Indian government rolled out a scheme called Study in India. So it was a program called Study in India, which was rolled out to attract international students, more and more international students to India. Even then, even with this kind of scheme being rolled out, scholarships being offered, the number of foreign students coming to India has not increased. And I will come to why, at my personal level, why I think so, that why are the numbers not increasing. But the data shows that the numbers have not really increased, even though a Study in India scholarship scheme has been rolled out by the Indian government. So this is on student mobility. The second is that, on faculty mobility, the Indian government has come up with various schemes. There is a scheme called Gyan, which attracts foreign scholars like a Fulbright scholar. They are being paid, a scholarship or a fellowship to come to India and teach at higher education institutions. Again, though this policy has been rolled out, we don't see as many foreign scholars or foreign professors coming into, through this government scheme coming to Indian institutions. Those, as I said, some of the Indian institutions which have a high priority of internationalization, primarily the private institutions, do find a lot of foreign scholars, but these are at an institutional level and not at a national level. The third is program mobility. The Indian government came up through this new education policy with a regulation from the main apex body called University Grants Commission, a regulation that promotes and encourages joint degree programs, dual degree programs, etc. And that has seen a sea change in Indian higher education. Many higher education institutions have collaborated with foreign partners for dual degrees, for joint degrees, and that has also probably at a national level helped the brain drain. Rather it is now a brain gain, because talent remains in India for maybe 2 years, and the last 2 years students move to another partner university. So we see a large number of such collaborations happening between two institutions, Indian and foreign, through dual degrees and joint degrees. Joint degrees, not many, but certainly dual degrees we see in plenty. As regards program mobility, again, COIL, we see a lot happening after COVID, because we all got into online education, which we never did. And therefore, we find it much more easier now to collaborate with foreign partners, to offer collaborative online programs, much better, much easier, and at a large scale, and as many, large number of Indian higher education institutions offering collaborative online programs. So that's regarding the programs. Recently, just last year, the Indian government came up with another regulation for foreign university campuses in India. And we already see 2 campuses at in the western part of India in a state called Gujarat, where Deakin University and Wollongong from Australia have set up campuses. We will probably see more campuses coming, foreign university campuses coming to India. I would, at a personal level, foresee not really large campuses, but maybe micro campuses of good universities within Indian university campuses through some collaborations. So that is something that we would see. At a research level, internationalization through research, the Indian government has come up with several schemes. One of the most popular schemes is the SPARK, the Scheme for Promotion of Academic Research. When an Indian university partners with a foreign university on joint research, there is a huge funding offered by the Indian government. And therefore, that is another popular scheme that has kind of encouraged international research or joint international research between higher education institutions. Coming to, I think this is on, this is about what the Indian government has done as related to policy, change in policies over the last 5 years. If you really come down to the surveys, as I said, 9% of Asia Pacific and probably very few Indian institutions responding only shows the apathy towards internationalization of higher education amongst higher education institutions in India. We need to promote internationalization amongst many. The second result which you spoke about was on the importance given to internationalization. We see this in India also. We see more and more institutions or specifically institutional leaderships participating in international higher education programs. So at a top-down level, there has been an increase in promoting internationalization. But again, the focus is international cooperation, capacity building, and building global competencies. So why do you want to internationalize your curriculum? Or why do you want to bring in collaborative online learning? Or why do you want to bring in foreign teachers into Indian university campuses? It is primarily, to build in international or global competencies among students. That is definitely high on priority. I already mentioned about the brain drain and the reverse brain gain through the dual degrees and all. So we hope that, more and more talent remains in India than really losing out that talent. As regards the geographic priorities for India, again, it is still the Europe, which is priority. America, we see, earlier it was a rise of American universities' dominance in collaboration with Indian partnering with Indian institutions. But now we see that decreasing and Europe increasing. But we are trying to promote the South-South collaborations as well. So in India, we're trying to see how, Indian universities can partner, say, with African universities, because, we would be probably able to find a lot of commonalities amongst us. So a large number of South-South collaborations is under discussion, and we will hope to see that change, which I don't think we've really seen in the survey findings, right? As I said, amongst the regional priorities, Europe is dominant for collaborative partners. We see the South-South, but we also see a lot of India and its neighborhood, right, which we really ignored. India plays a major role, when it comes to the neighboring countries. We are seeing a little bit of trickle between collaborations within our neighborhood, whether it's Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, small countries like Bhutan, trying to collaborate with Indian universities, sending their faculty, having our faculty travel there. So these kind of trickling effect has been seen. I think India needs to play a dominant role within this space of the SAARC countries. So that is again a little change that we see. Internationalization of curriculum at home. Yes, we see that again happening in some Indian universities, not all, but collaborative online learning and teaching has certainly it has been seen in a big way after COVID. And therefore, if you look at the internationalization of curriculum, again, to promote global competencies, you see that happening in a much better way than before. You spoke about sustainability and internationalization. Definitely, we see that in some institutions in India, even in the impact rankings of the Times Higher Education, institutions like Symbiosis, Manipal, Shulini, some of the private universities have seen, being ranked amongst the impact rankings. So the SDG goals being given importance specifically for teaching, and also for research. So we do align our research to the SDG goals. And when it comes to collaborative research with foreign partners, we certainly focus on the SDGs. And therefore, we see this kind of, the sustainable development and internationalization going hand in hand. Lastly, on community and societal engagements, not much, but we do see a little bit of trickle there as well. A lot of a lot of students from UK, faculty from UK and Europe wanting to collaborate with Indian universities to work with, with communities, with societal engagements, so with civil society and so on. So there have been some projects that have been underway, at least specifically with our university, but we do see that trickle amongst higher education institutions in India. So just to conclude, Giorgio, I would like to say that in the last 5 years, internationalization has been in the focus, more specifically from 2020 because of the new education policy. Internationalization has come into focus in India. The number of higher education institutions wanting to internationalize has certainly increased. One of the reasons, of course, we spoke about global competencies, but something that we didn't look at even in the survey, or which didn't come out in the survey, was also rankings. that has played a major role because internationalization of higher education finds that space in the rankings, and therefore more and more Indian institutions wanting to be globally ranked and benchmarked. So therefore also the focus of internationalization. So I would say benchmarking and rankings has been playing a major role. And of course, the pressure of being there at the top, being there globally known, is there. And therefore, I'm happy and glad that we see a lot of internationalization in the last 5 years. Number of foreign students hasn't really increased. And I would say, and I am urging this to the Indian government, that we need to promote more of...
Can you please conclude, because we are...
Last, that we need to open up our employment, at least our internship sector in the corporates for foreign students. I think once we do that, then you will see more flow of international or foreign students to India. Thank you very much, Joe, and sorry for taking a minute extra.
Thank you very much for the very interesting overview of India. And now, without further ado, I would like to move immediately to Japan and Professor Yuto Kitamura.
Thank you very much. I really would like to express my sincere appreciation to APAIE and IAU for giving me this precious opportunity to join you. And I've been very much interested and impressed by the survey results, and very much looking forward to the further analysis you will probably provide us in future. And just a quick response to the survey itself. I've been interested whether you had a sub-regional analysis in the Asia Pacific, since Asia Pacific is we have such a diversity. So we really need to focus on the different sub-regions. So that's one of the future analysis I very much look forward to, from coming out from your side. But basically, I was very much fascinated by the results. And then now I would like to share some of the situations regarding the internationalization of higher education in Japan. And I'd like to raise 3 issues. One is first, quality of internationalization. And second, whose initiative for the internationalization. And third one is responsibilities relating to the internationalizations. So first one, quality of internationalizations. I myself have been looking at the situation of the internationalization of higher education in collaboration with UNESCO Bangkok for the last 10 years, having a lot of discussions and then organizing workshops and doing some survey. And we see, as the survey result shows, the internationalization of the education and research have been very much active today, and it's becoming more. However, probably it's time to raise a question of quality of internationalizations. I mean, when we introduce the international education programs, how we assure its quality. Of course, for instance, the more close collaboration through like a COIL can assure the certain level of quality. But at the same time, we have to look at the quality from the different perspectives. For instance, in the context of Japan, one of the biggest and the long-standing issue is the language, whether we should use English or not. It depends on the different disciplinary fields. I mean, natural science fields, obviously, it's kind of easier to introduce English. However, we have accumulated a lot of resources and knowledge in the humanities and social sciences in Japanese language. How we can utilize these resources for the internationalization. That we haven't discussed enough yet, but I think that's one of the challenges for us at the Japanese universities to maximize the resources we have. And second point I would like to raise is the whose initiative. The internationalization of higher education in Japan has been led mainly by the government, the Ministry of Education. I mean, the ministry has introduced a lot of different programs in collaboration with foreign governments or international organizations. I mean, for instance, Campus Asia in collaboration with China and South Korea, or AIMS promoted by CIMEO, Southeast Asian Ministers Education Organizations. Or Japanese government has introduced the long-standing 10 years globalization program called the Top Global University Project. So the government has put a lot of resources to encourage universities to internationalize our education research. However, the government pays attention on the pressure from society, particularly from the industries. Then, for instance, government really tried to emphasize the governance reform along with the internationalization. I mean, governance reform should not be dealt along with the internationalization, but when the government provide the resources for the university for internationalize our campus, they also ask the universities to strengthen the leadership of the management and then try to change the governance structure of the universities. So these two have to my opinion, these two have to be dealt kind of separately. But for the government, the internationalization is a good way to mobilize resources and then put some pressure on the universities for some other purpose as well. So that kind of things we have to be careful. I mean, for instance, about the world university ranking, I mean, the industry always emphasize that kind of issues, but whether we should really look at that, I mean, that's different topic for the institutions ourselves. But again, since we receive a lot of financial resources from the government for internationalizing our campus, we cannot neglect those kind of social pressure. So how we can be more autonomous and then take the lead for the internationalization by universities themselves, that's probably another challenge we are facing in Japan. And third one, I mean, responsibilities for the internationalizations. Now, this topic, I think this is very important for the Japanese universities today. I mean, many universities are now really looking at the SDGs and how to contribute to the society by promoting the different types of the researches and education. So we consider university as a global public good. So that kind of consensus has been more promoted after the adoption of the SDGs. And then I think that more and more universities are trying to play our social responsibilities. So one of the emerging topic is so-called scholars at risk. So how we can accept those refugees, I mean, the scholars and students who are refugees. I mean, Japan has been very closed society, so we have been accepting very small number of refugees each year. But the university should play more roles to, accept more refugees as the scholars at risk. So this is just one example, but how we can play more important social roles to play our social responsibilities. So that should also go along with the issue of internationalizations. So again, my point was really, how we can improve the quality of internationalization, and second, who should take lead for the internationalizations, and third, how we can exercise our social responsibility through the internationalizations. So these are the, of course, there are more topics and issues in Japan, but to me, these are three important issues relating to the internationalization of higher education in Japan. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kitamura, for this very interesting overview of the issues in Japan, the most pressing issue in Japan. And as you said, for sure, there are more. I think this webinar could last at least 3 hours more because it's a very interesting topic to discuss. But now let's go to Thailand, and let's go to Professor Norpranu to have an overview of the situation in Thailand.
Okay, thank you so much for having me in this webinar. And first off, I would like to commend the IAU's attempt to link between internationalization and sustainable development, and also community engagement. And for the other 4 speakers and colleagues, I think they have already highlighted the linkage between the core missions of higher education institutions and internationalization. And I totally agree that in nowadays in Thailand, and I think across Asia Pacific and across the world, internationalization is no longer a choice, but a necessity for all higher education institutions. And the concept itself has been aligned very well, all in terms of education, in terms of research, in terms of student mobilities in Thailand itself. I think the majority of our universities in Thailand, we have already embraced internationalization, both internationalization abroad and internationalization at home as part of the key strategies in providing higher education service in Thailand. But what I'd like to draw the attention of all the audience here today, using the perspective and also examples being done at my university, Mahidol University. My university, Mahidol University, is how we link internationalization with sustainable development goals, and also with the focus on community engagement. I think I'm very fortunate to be in the university where the university council and all executives are very keen on asking the same question, whether how we would be able to contribute more, apart from our service in education and our aspiration in climbing up the research league tables. We are also asking ourselves how we are going to be concretely and more seriously contribute our knowledge and transfer our knowledge into the society and also the community. So this past years, I think especially in the past 2 or 3 years, we have already managed to use the indicators in the THE impact ranking as the signpost, I would say, as the signpost to monitor how we have been doing in terms of education, how we integrate education, and how do we integrate SDGs into our courses across the university. And we found out that in the past 2 or 3 years, we managed to come up with about 90% of all courses addressing SDGs, and definitely with the SDG as the overarching framework of the university, we managed to ask our lecturers and program directors to tick the box which SDGs they're embracing into or integrating into their courses. So about 90% of our courses provided within the university have some elements of SDGs involved. In terms of research data, I would say that about 50% of our publication has been addressing SDG 3, and I think we are trying our best to balance to have more balanced distribution in terms of the publication addressing the other SDG goals. And in terms of activities for the students, we are also addressing SDG as our flagship mobility programs. We are working together with many international partners. We are trying our best to integrate SDGs or sustainable development into the key mobility programs, our summer programs, and some other tailor-made programs. We are working together with our international partners to address SDGs, and we hope that students engaging with our programs will be able to come up with a lot of concrete results, be it pilot project addressing the SDG, whatever goal they're going to address, that's fine. They're going to address a small pilot project for policy advocacy, that they could actually voice their thoughts regarding the SDGs and also their future. We also use community engagement as our backbone in terms of working together with the community. As I mentioned earlier, that we are trying to use the strength of our internationalization policy at Mahidol University to transfer the knowledge to the community. And this is not only about us doing the community engagement on our own. We are trying to connect international partners to work with us. So that's why we are having quite a lot of programs being supported by many foreign ministries from several countries, granting agencies, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also some other governments and scholarship programs. these programs, we call them capacity building, and they're focusing on the knowledge transfer and know-how transfer. And I believe that in one of the indicators of the IAU survey, you mentioned about the technology and expertise transfer, which includes activities abroad. That's what we have been doing in the past years. And in this past 7 years, we managed to accumulate grants from other major donors for about 6.7 million US dollars dedicated to only knowledge transfer to the community. And we are using our institution as a gateway, as a bridge to connect international partners to transfer the knowledge and know-how together with our experts within the university and make it happen, make a difference in the communities across the region. So the beneficiaries are wide range, CLMV countries, those ASEAN countries as well in various fields, ranging from medical education, ranging from sustainable future for developing countries. Like we are trying to create community of practices. We are trying to create and diversify several training programs. We are providing support and the development of the community leaders in many developing countries. Without the internationalization, without collaboration with international partners, we wouldn't be able to execute quite a large numbers of projects and programs. And I think that this is going to be the way in which we are going to look forward to using internationalization, apart from using internationalization to promote the core business like education or research or student mobility. But we would like to explore and would like to create more impact for the community in the near future using our ability to connect with international partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Norpanue, for this very interesting overview of Thailand, and also for having kept the time, because this will allow us to move to the question and answer session. And here I would like to give the floor to my colleague Lucinda Malgas from APAIE, then she can pose you a few questions that arrived from the participants' side and maybe also from our side.
Thank you so much, Giorgio. I just want to say thank you first to our panelists. So interesting. We could have spoken about so many more things. But really appreciate your participation in this. And I guess the first question, Lucy has actually posed her first question just in relation to China. So just wondering if you'd be happy to explain to us, are there any specific initiatives that has been implemented to foster international collaboration and also to attract global students from regions outside of Asia?
Okay, thanks for this very insightful question. I would like to answer this one from two perspectives. The first one is individual level. The second one is from the institutional level. For the individual level, we can focus on the student first. We supply the summer school. We invite very famous scholars around the world and go to Renmin University and give a summer school to students. It's open to all of our undergraduate and postgraduate student, and we supply exchange program for students and also English degree program for students, and also the summer internship. As you know, empowering students with the international perspective and competence is a concept that has been around for a long time, but has been quite difficult to operationalize in practice. And in recent years, we have a new idea that was popular in China's top universities. We call it global competence. Global competence, not only international perspective. This one we focus on global competence because we see in an increasingly collected world, cross-border and cross-cultural exchange becomes more frequent than ever. So we supply students with what we focus on 6 core parts: world knowledge, global issues, language, openness, respect, communication, collaboration, self-awareness, self-confidence, and responsibility. There is even some very special program for training of personnel for international organization. In order to cultivate international talents to participate in global governance and international organization, Renmin University launched the Global Governance and International Organization Talent Training Program. Is quite a new one, which focuses on strengthening students' calculation of global governance and international organization, and training students' professional abilities in international organization and laying a solid foundation for their future work in international organization. So what have we prepared for students? It included the excellent course and scientific research training system. We use the project-based learning, and we supply international organization exchange practice program. And also we have the international organization internship recommendation platform. This is what we do for students, and let's say what we do for the faculty. We financially support faculty members to conduct research with international partners, and we give the research funding, and we support international conference. We recruit faculty with international background, and we support international publication, and we also support the faculties to engage in the international organization exchange program. From the institutional level, Renmin University have organized a lot of international conferences, and we focus on building up and engage with the association, collaborate with the leading university on the one hand, and also build networks and expand the global networks. And we most importantly, we focus the reformation to improve the quality. We give particular focus on the learning process and the learning outcomes of international students. And we have focus on launch reforms and building up the international cooperation to share the best practice and teaching technologies across borders. Also looking forward to have a more deeper and more collaboration with different universities from different regions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that thorough answer. Because we're running out of time, I thought it'd be great just to get last minute opinions in relation to this. As the authors, Giorgio has said about the survey, it's a starting point. Lots of research still needs to be done in relation to solidifying these results. And we've spoken about the benefits of internationalization and the importance of internationalization. From your aspects and from your regions, what do you perceive as the biggest threat or the biggest risk to internationalization? And I'm opening the floor to anyone who'd like to start. Thank you.
May I? Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think that by responding to your question, Lucinda's question, I also like to elaborate the question raised in the Q&A about the Japanese approach to the internationalization. I mean, one of the topic I really like Giorgio and your team to explore is to see what sort of university models have been disseminated through the internationalization of higher education. Because basically, for instance, the Japanese government are very much looking at the US university model as American model as a kind of the model. And then this question raised as about the top global university project. We have, after this project, the government had a special set up, launch a special fund over $6 trillion of funds to support internationalization of universities. I mean, very selected universities in Japan. But this is very much kind of based on the academic capitalistic model. I mean, if I may say, I mean, but at the same time, I'm not really criticizing that because US universities, particularly those top research universities, have a huge endowment, and then also they can really hire the number of researchers to work on the top-hand researches. And then that's the intention the Japanese government tried to encourage, to push some of the top research universities in Japan. But those are very much selected number of universities that can be required and qualified to do. I mean, so internationalization has to be more diversified, and then cannot just apply one university model to do. So that's why I also raised the issue how you can see the sub-region wise as well. So that kind of topic, if you could explore, I'd appreciate. And I'm sorry I couldn't respond fully about Anna-san. I mean, but if you're interested, please contact me. I can discuss more about this new initiative by Japanese government. But thank you very much.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. And I think someone else wanted to say something in relation to that.
Yeah, so I wanted to say, so I think your question was what is the biggest risk or the threat to internationalization? At a personal level, I don't think there is any risk or threat. But I think what probably at a national level, India did feel that the threat was, India was a sender country more than a recipient country, right? So a lot of brain drain was happening. And therefore that they thought was a threat. And therefore they came up with something like a dual degree or joint degrees, you know, where Indian students can remain in Indian universities and, you know, do programs alongside, you know, the foreign university, getting the foreign university degree. So I think at a national level, they felt that was a threat. At a personal level, I really don't think. In fact, I feel that, you know, internationalization opens up minds of young people and the larger picture of believing that the whole world is one family. So it has more gain than threat.
Absolutely, it definitely has more gains. My question was definitely what are the threats to internationalization, I guess. But yeah, the benefits of it are that's not even in question. Does anyone else? Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. Does anyone else want to speak to that? What you consider to be the biggest threats to internationalization of education?
Yeah, may I jump in just a little bit? I think for education as the core missions of higher education institutions, we have to make sure that the quality is there, because we have to, well, be aware that whenever we would like to have dual degree programs, joint degree programs, we really have to think about whether or not the quality is pretty much the same. It's not just the getting into the agreement, but the quality is something that we have to look into. And for research, I think nowadays we have to think about how to be mindful about the research of the equitable research and responsible research, especially in terms of international collaboration between the global North and the global South. I think those are the things that we have to really think about for the future of internationalization, the more sustainable way of engaging with each other. And also in terms of the student mobility, I think the traditional way of providing experience only in terms of culture probably is not enough anymore. I meant it's still very important, because we still have to encourage cultural understanding across the globe. But I think we should also make sure that the SDG is there. This maybe not only the SDGs, the sustainability of the future is there, and it has to be started off with students, probably not us, but with students. So I think with the core missions of higher education institutions, I think internationalization is here to stay, but we have to look at it in a different angle. Yeah.
Lucinda, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Venki. I was just saying, I don't even think we have any more time for any more questions, which is really unfortunate. But I'd love, Venki and Giorgio, if you were happy to wrap it up, that would be fantastic. And again, my thanks to this amazing panel of speakers. Really, really appreciate your input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lucinda. Before I give you the floor for the conclusion, Venki, very quickly, let me also thank all the panelists for their very insightful contribution. And let me say just two very short things. The first one, many participants asked for it. The webinar is recorded, and the recordings will be available on the APAIE and on the IAU website. And I already shared with you the link where the recordings on the IAU will appear. And the other thing that I would like to do, as we are speaking about survey, we are speaking about research, let me do a call that I already did in the chat, but very briefly, I would like to share the call for the survey that we are conducting now on the digital transformation of higher education. So it's the second survey, which will be open until the 1st of October. You will see, you can, I share with you the call in the chat, so you can reply to this survey at the following link. I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. So it's here. So this is a call, and I really hope that there will be many more higher education institutions from Asia Pacific replying to the second global survey on the digital transformation. Said that, and thanking again all the participants and all the speakers, I would like to give the floor to Venki for final remarks and conclusion of this webinar. Thank you very much.
First, I'd like to thank Giorgio, as well as our panel speakers from Australia, China, India, Japan, and Thailand, for sharing this their interesting perspective from their specific region. Now, during the session, I did, based on what was said, I tried to capture some of the key points. One thing is internationalization is no longer a choice, but a necessity for universities in the Asia Pacific region. This, like I remember many years ago, very, very few universities in India had any international collaboration. But now that's changed, and that's happening in other places like Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, and the region, right? The other important thing is the hybrid models of education, combining online and face-to-face, will continue to add value to international students and will provide more opportunities for international students in the Asia Pacific. And many universities are pursuing this strategy as part of their international education. So it's not about just sending and receiving students physically, but how do you provide internationalization, but at home, right? And this relates to my third point. International policies and activities are increasingly aligned with sustainable development strategies of the university. So how do we ensure that we satisfy the SDGs? And as I think Noprano mentioned, it's important that we start with student travel, and we need to look at that carefully. It is important. I do agree that physical presence, going to a particular university and spending 6 months is good. You learn a lot about the culture, being physically there. But how do you combine that with short visits? And I think especially for Asia Pacific, there's a need for enhancing collaboration within Asia Pacific, because there are lots of regions where you can get in 2 hours, 1 hour, and therefore, how do we get students exposed to more the region, and then think about going to Europe and US and further. And the other point is that we need to move to solutions that provide mutual benefits for local and international universities. And I think this was highlighted by a number of panel members in terms of providing joint and dual degree programs. It's not about, trying to get students to come and study from a particular country. I know it's financially, it's important, but it's more important that the universities start collaborating with each other. And one of the challenges, of course, is that how do you ensure quality? And I don't know whether there are currently frameworks that universities can use to assess quality of other universities. Maybe more research is done there. And I think maybe APAIE will work in this area and we can publish some papers as well. Okay. So this, from a Singapore perspective, the government is also keen to push for more collaboration in the ASEAN region, for example, ASEAN, China, and Japan as well, and India. So that's something that they're trying to push, trying to get students to be, moving to countries in the region, and that's funding is available for that as well from the Singapore government. So with that, I'm going to conclude. Thank you very much once again, and thank all the participants as well for all their interesting questions. And thank you very much, and wishing you a good weekend. Today's Thursday, and there's just another day or so before the weekend. Thank you.